Ladies and gentlemen, it is now 6:30 p.m. and a quorum of members is present. So the meeting of the Board of Education of the School District of New Berlin is called to order. Please call the roll.
Mr. David. Here. Mr. Kugler. Mr. Kurth. Here. Ms. Manley. Here. Mr. Maxey.
Here.
Mr. Nickerson.
Here.
Ms. Crosby.
I have a motion. I would entertain a motion to adjourn to closed session.
Mr. President, in consideration of movement into closed session pursuant of Section 19.85, 1, C, E, and F of the Wisconsin statutes to consider C, job performance, compensation, and employment of public employee over which the Board of Education has jurisdiction and exercises responsibility, E, deliberating and negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever the competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session, and F, to review personal histories or disciplinary data of specific persons which, if discussed in public, would likely have substantial adverse effect upon the reputation of any person referred to in such histories and data. Board to discuss and have possible action on A, approval of closed session minutes of July 14th, 2014, B, employment, performance, and compensation matters pertaining to staff, C, negotiation strategies. And that should wrap her up.
Do I have a second? Motion by Mr. Kerr, second by Mr. David, to adjourn to closed session. Diana, can you please call the roll?
Mr. David.
Yes.
Mr. Kurth.
Yes.
Ms. Manley.
Yes.
Mr. Maxey.
Yes.
Mr. Nickerson.
Yes.
Ms. Crosby.
Motion carries 6-0. Mr. Kugler did let me know that he would not be in attendance this evening. We will be adjourning to closed session, returning to open session around 7 p.m.
Listen to the Beatles run old Bo Seekers through a jukebox needle at the honky tonk where they boot stomp all night. What? Yeah, what they call work and digging in the dirt. Gotta get it in the ground before the rain come down to get the girl and your four-wheel drive. Yeah, the boys round here drinking that ice cold beer, talking about girls, talking about trucks, running them red dirt roads out, kicking up dust. The boys round here sending up a prayer to the man upstairs. Backwoods legit, don't take no shit. Shoot her back and shoot her back and shoot her back a spit. Oh heck. Well, the boys around here, they're keeping it country. Ain't a damn one know how to do the Dougie. No, I'm not in Kentucky, but these girls around here, yep, they still love me. Yeah, the girls around here, they all deserve a whistle. Shaking that sugar sweet as Dixie Crystal. They like that yawling southern drawl and just can't help it cause they just keep falling for the boys around here. Drinking that ice cold beer, talking about girls, talking about trucks, running them red dirt roads out, kicking up dust. The boys around here sending up a prayer to the man upstairs. Backwoods legit, don't take no shit. Shoot her back and shoot her back and shoot her back a spit.
Let's ride through the countryside. Let's ride.
Hey now girl, hop inside. Me and you gonna take a little ride to the river. Let's ride. Lay a blanket on the ground. Kissing in the crickets is the only sound. We out of town.
Let's ride.
Have you ever got down?
Let's ride.
Do you wanna get down?
Let's ride.
Girl, you gotta get down with the boys around here, drinking that ice cold beer, talking about girls, talking about trucks, running them red dirt roads out, kicking up dust. The boys around here, sending up a prayer to the man upstairs. Backwoods legit, don't take no shit. Shoot her back and shoot her back and shoot her back a spit. Oh, yeah. I'm one of them boys around here. I'm thinking about you and me, how we'll be. So come on, girl, hop inside. Me and you, we're gonna take a little ride. Lay a blanket on the ground, kissing in the crickets is the only sound. We out of town.
Let's ride.
Yeah.
Let's ride.
Girl, you gotta get down with the.
Let's ride. Let's ride.
I'm not sure if I gave you enough copies. Here's
No, I didn't get any at all. I'm stealing yours. He had an extra one.
Jeff, let me get that water.
I just stole his to give.
gloss over, we don't have kids that are here for it, so. Right, so just don't even. We'll move right on. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is 7 o'clock. We are returning from closed session to open session. In recognition of the serious and important nature of our efforts here, we will join in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Please rise.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now, for those who wish to prepare for the meeting, we will have a moment of silence. This is a public meeting of the Board of Education. Prior to this meeting, notice was given to the public last Friday by posting the agenda at each district school, the district office, and the city library. The agenda was also posted on the district website. Copies of the agenda were forwarded to the Waukesha-Freeman, the Journal-Sentinel, and the New Berlin Now, all of which have filed requests for all public notices. First item on the agenda this evening is privilege of the floor, and I've got a short statement to read before this. Privilege of the floor is a portion of a meeting with an opportunity for citizens to come and address their concerns to the board. So please don't be offended if we quietly listen. We may even take some notes. We do not immediately respond to questions or comments. This is a time for you to talk and for us to listen. Thank you for coming to voice your opinion. I ask that you please address the chair and state your name and address. Each presentation is to be restricted to a maximum of 3 minutes. Privilege of the floor will be limited to a half hour. Presentations are not to be designed for the purpose of engaging others in debate in this forum. Discussion of certified, classified, or professional personnel or of individual Board of Education members shall not be considered an appropriate topic for this forum, and the speaker will be ruled out of order. First speaker this evening is Cheryl Nowak.
My name is Cheryl Nowak, and my husband and I are long-term residents of New Berlin. We have 2 daughters, one going in kindergarten and one in 4th grade this year. I'm here because the current before and after school program run by the Wisconsin Youth Company does not meet the needs of our families. How this all started is I went to the program to enroll my daughter in last year where she was in part-time, and at a cost of about $400 a month for 1 hour before school and 1 hour after school. The following year, my work schedule changed, and my boss said that I needed additional care for before and after school costs for after school program for my daughter, so I actually needed more time for that program. And when I went to enroll her, they told me that there was no more room because the ratio of the financial situation to children wasn't the right ratio, so I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to go. So I did research, and I found out Apple Ridge next door could provide daycare, but I was lucky enough to have another parent help me out to take my daughter after school. Then my other daughter is going to kindergarten this year, and I had to get before and after school care for 2 children. When I went to the Wisconsin Youth Company, I found out that the cost for that program was anywhere between $800 and $1,500 a month for an hour before school and an hour after school. I talked to Mr. Dickinson, who was very nice. He took his time to meet with me. I explained my concern, that it wasn't only just a monetary concern I was concerned about. I was concerned about the fact that I had to take my children next door to Apple Ridge Academy, drop them off. They had to get on a bus, go next door, be dropped off at school, and do the same thing over and over again. So now you have 4 modes of transportation for children just going into kindergarten, which to me is an unsafe situation, especially with little ones getting on and off a bus. Then my kids can't participate in after-school activities because they have to get on a bus to go next door, which just seems a little unbelievable to me. I did a little more research. I talked to more parents. I found out that the YMCA program offered is about $250 a month, and Apple Ridge is comparable per child. Also, some of the neighboring communities have schools that are run by their rec department as little as $65 a semester for their children. I talked to the lady at Apple Ridge, the owner. She said that she had never had an opportunity to bid, and they hold almost double or triple the volume of students from our school, and they're running out of space because they have so many of our families at their center, which told me a lot about the struggle that parents are facing with the existing program. I also
Ma'am?
talked to other...
If you can wrap up quickly, because your
Sure.
3 minutes has expired.
Okay. So my question is, or not question, I'd like the current proposal to go out for bid for the coming up school year. Currently, what we're asking parents to do is risk their children's safety, not be included in activities which they should be able to, and anyone making $15, $20 an hour, you're asking them to take 1 week's paycheck to pay for an hour of after school and an hour before school of daycare, which seems excessive and completely unreasonable.
Okay, thank you very much. Certainly consider everything you had to say. Next, we have Mary Ann Reed.
Mary Ann Reed, 19011 West Pinecrest Lane, New Berlin, 47 years here, and love it. My issue are the monies that you need for the 2 new swimming pools, possibly, or repair the old, possibly, and a new roof. Number 1, the new roof comes first. If you need a new roof on both schools, that goes first. Now, I come from the old school where West Division High, which is no longer, wood floors, and geez, I went there in the 40s. No swimming pool, we survived. If you have to, I would be in favor, me, myself, and I, of having one of the pools if everybody complains that they just have to have a pool. Absolutely no 2 pools in Eisenhower and 1 here at New Berlin West. Or else, get rid of both of them. Cut a deal with Brookfield. They've got deep pockets. If you have to have a swimming pool, arrange a deal with them like we do the fire department and scratch each other's back. And if you have swim meets, set up a deal over there. City of New Berlin, we're doing great now, but where's this money going to come from? It's unbelievable that it would even be brought up to repair at that exorbitant dollar figure for both of them. Not only that, the chemicals. I'm not that familiar with pools. I do know they're costly. I do know you have to have more insurance for the schools because of the pools. I do know the chemicals are expensive. I do know the maintenance is very, very expensive. And I'm curious, I understand our seniors go to these pools. Well, if you're going to close both of them, how about the seniors going to the Y? I know the Y is in bankruptcy, but they're still open for business. And if they don't want to go there, go to a hotel or go in the summertime, go down to that pool down in West Dallas that across from what used to be Roberts Golf Course. And the maintenance is very high. One thing I'd like to know, and I don't know that you could tell me, just how much use are these pools being used by the seniors, and what dollar figure are we getting from them? If it's a good pat on the back there, we'll not charge you anything or much. We can't afford that anymore. And I understand from the kids that I talk to, they don't have that much going on in the schools anymore, in the pools. And for a few kids that are going into them, yeah, you got it in gym. We had gym too when we took showers after you played baseball, basketball, and whatever. Let's see here. Okay. Times are over for these large dollar ticket items. We can't pay them anymore. The people are all tapped out. They're getting part-time jobs once they're let go of their full-time job. And with Washington, D.C. dipping in your right pocket, your left pocket, and taking you by the ankles and shaking whatever you got left. And taxes are going to go up with the trillions that we're in debt. We can't afford that. No way can we.
Okay. Thank you. In the interest of, unfortunately, hearing from the others.
I'm through.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ralph Hune.
Good evening. If you looked at your New Berlin Now tonight, you saw this blog, but there's a lot of people that haven't seen the blog, so I might as well just read it to you. The New Berlin Citizens for Responsible Government has several questions for the school board regarding the New Berlin School District's 2014-15 proposed budget. The school board has proposed a 3.78 property tax levy increase, which we believe, or NBCRG believes, requires further clarification and explanation. The school board is making the claim that since the growth in the tax base, which is the assessed valuation of property in New Berlin, will increase 2% this year. And since the growth is a direct offset against the tax rate increase, they claim your taxes will only go up 1.78%. Normally, the school district gets annual tax base growth estimates from the city of New Berlin. According to city records, the tax base is projected to grow by only 1% this year, not 2%. So your tax bill will actually increase by 2.78%. So our question is, why is the school district using a growth projection which is twice as high as the growth rate in the city, or projected by the city? Why is the board significantly understating the actual size of the property tax increase people will get in December? Not only is the overall percentage tax increase troubling, there are specific budget items which cause serious concern. How do you justify to New Berlin taxpayers increase spending on school district administration from $3,829,398 last year up to $4,211,266 in 2014-15, which seems to be about a 9.7% increase. There's got to be some answers from something. The budget for pupil services is proposed to jump from $598,452 now up to $828,208 for next year, for a whopping 38.39% increase. So what is your explanation for this high increase? According to New Berlin Now, the school board is giving a 3% salary increase to district teachers. The school board also is not asking teachers to pay a larger percentage of their health insurance premiums, which is now about 12.5%. However, many taxpayers in the private sector are paying over 30% of their health insurance premiums, and God only knows what's going to happen next year when we get Obamacare, and 15, we are up the creek and are lucky to get any pay increase at all. In fact, I guess Social Security, they said it's going to go up like 1.5%, but because there's no inflation, as we can tell. So why is the school board not taking advantage of the Act 10 law to keep spending and taxes at a reasonable level? These are some of the questions that you got right now. We'll have more of them for you at the annual meeting. And as I say, the annual meeting should be at the Performing Arts Center for the simple matter that everyone can hear better in the auditorium. This place is still a barn, and it's hollow and it's echo, and I have no idea where the sound is coming from, except it's just noisier than heck. And if we had more people, we'd have probably even more difficult hearing. So anyhow, it's probably the only time that people actually see what they paid for by going into this Performing Arts Center. Thank you.
Bill Adams. And thank you, Ralph.
As most of you know, I usually come up here either to complain or to plead for a lost cause. But today I come to praise, specifically with respect to the summer school program that was conducted here at West several weeks ago, STEM related. My son participated in the robotics class of Mr. Zellinger, and for him it was transformative, going from wanting perhaps to be a computer game designer to maybe being a design engineer. And that's a huge change, as I'm sure you as parents can appreciate. Anyway, I also talked to a number of other parents, and they were equally praising the other classes that were conducted at that time. And so I urge you, A, to continue the program, B, to expand the program substantially, because there's a huge unmet need for the middle school and the younger high school students to have something meaningful to do in the summer. And these programs were particularly meaningful because it introduces them to this environment. It provides career-related support and activities, and there's really not much else for them to do. The younger children, there's a proliferation of daycare or glorified daycare programs for them, but not for the older children. I think there is also a business opportunity here to meet that unmet need. And I'm sure Mr. Dixon could indicate what the payment would have to be in order to make it financially viable. I think it's a huge opportunity, and I would strongly encourage you to look at it closely, give praise where it's due, and also to expand the program not only in the technical areas, but in areas such as literature and language and other very important things that is part of the educational mission of this district. And one last point on a different subject. I know there's a huge amount of opposition to tax increases and to things like swimming pools, which all I know is my children use the pools very frequently. It's a wonderful exercise. If you want to be competitive with the school districts in the area and attract the families to this community, things like swimming pools are important. They're also huge unmet needs, and as far as I'm concerned, it is more than reasonable what you were asking for. And indeed, I think if I were sitting in your chair, I would probably ask for more. because the money, I'm sure, in your hands would be very well spent. We have to look to the future and not the past. We have to attract families into this community. Having a world-class school district, which I think you're in the process of building, is important. And what some may look at as luxuries, such as swimming pools, are actually necessities if you want to compete for fewer and fewer children that are coming. And if you don't take them and have them buy the homes of the people who are exiting the scene, then they will go to Brookfield. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. And Vern Bentley.
Good evening, Vernon Bentley, 3450 South Johnson Road. My understanding is that the board is going to present the questions for the survey tonight. Unfortunately, we won't be able to answer any of them. Sometimes they have it during an informational meeting rather than privilege of the floor. I followed surveys in the school district and the city government for years, and it's always been interesting because they always ask the residents what they'd want. Similar to, would you like a new swimming pool? Yes. Would you like a new school? Yes. Would you like a new gym? Yes. Would you like a sports complex? Yes. The question that I always wait at the end is the one I never read. Do you want to pay for them with an increase in your school district property tax? Because that would come out no. We went through this with Park and Rec in the city a few years ago about a sports complex they wanted to put in at Milham Park. And we filled the city hall up with people who were against it because they knew about it. And this is one of the situations we have here. My understanding is you're going to have the meeting, your annual meeting here instead of the PAC, because most people don't know anything about this. I've talked to people recently on the phone and in person, and I asked them if they were even aware of this because all this information was in the July 24th now. They don't have a clue. But one of the things that a lot of them said is, you know, New Berlin property taxes are really low. I mean, I won't say low, but they haven't changed through the years. But that's because of the city tax being a 0% property tax increase. And even the county and the state's been holding back the last couple of years. But it seems as though the school district wants to go and just keep raising taxes, tax and spend. Also, I hope that when you, if this would happen to go to referendum, I hope that you explain the cost of it. I believe that what I read in the paper was $22 million, but for how many years, and what will be the annual cost to residents, similar to the one you have about the $50 for a $250,000 home in your regular budget. The people in this community have not been watching the school board, and they haven't been watching what you've been doing, but it's about time that maybe they're going to have to wake up and come and visit you a little bit more often. Thank you.
Thank you. And we do encourage you to attend every meeting, especially the annual meeting, which is our next meeting. So I want to take a minute to thank everyone for coming to speak. I ask that those of you who have questions about the survey stay. We're going to be discussing it this evening. Ken, who's behind you there, is going to be kind of laying out the survey, and I can tell you that you'll be happy with the way it's written. It was one of the concerns we all had, okay? Next item on the agenda is the president's message, and I do not have one, so we'll move on to the administrative team report.
I did want to just strictly move to the facilities project update, of which all of our projects at this point that have been laid out are moving forward and on time and on budget, and again, to the point where there will be no disruption to student learning come the start of the school year. There are a couple of areas at Eisenhower that, while will be functional, will not be complete with regards to, there are floors, cement floors in a couple of the areas, but in order for us to put tile down, given the amount of moisture that we had earlier in the summer season, we cannot lay the tile down until the cement is cured. Otherwise, we'll be redoing that tile shortly thereafter. So while it will be, again, a fully functional workspace and learning space for our students, there will be just one delay, and that's on putting the tile floor down in a couple different areas there at Eisenhower. But otherwise, everything is moving on as planned. Again, please want to mention to you that it was planned that the Eisenhower Auditorium would be delayed until October or so, and that was in our original plan. As we talked to the music and play directors at Eisenhower, it was we can either start early to ensure that the auditorium is available at the start of the school year, or we wait, and then it would be delayed out, and this was what their preference was, and so we went along with the recommendation. But that's really just the general update of the many projects that are being done and being completed as we speak. I know that Tom and Dave have asked to do another facilities tour with the board, as we had done prior to when you saw Eisenhower in disarray. It's a much different place today as it was then. It's interesting to know that school will be starting 3 weeks from now, and we're still being told things are going on as planned. But we will be working on getting that date set with the board to tour the facility with Andy and possibly Roger and I as well. So that is our admin team update for today.
Great. Thank you, Joe. The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Do I have a motion on the consent agenda?
Mr. President, I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion by Mr. David, second by Mrs. Manley to approve the consent agenda as presented. Is there any discussion on this one item? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And this brings us to our regular agenda. The first item on the agenda is the long-range facility planning community poll presentation. A little background on the facilities plan. The School District of New Berlin Board of Education has approved $18 million long-range facility plan to address the facility needs. And that was actually done last year. Projects that are included in this support safety and academics, energy efficiency, and they're being funded through the district operating budget, through fund balance, and through borrowing funds through the energy efficiency revenue limit exemption called Act 32. Projects already approved in the plan include all New Berlin School District buildings receiving upgrades to security, doors, security cameras, remodeled front offices for better visual control of access, renovations to increase energy efficiency for long-term cost savings, necessary code regulations to meet ADA compliance, general interior and exterior maintenance and upkeep. While projects are being completed at all schools, New Berlin Eisenhower is receiving most of the upgrades, including new HVAC system to promote a quality learning environment, science and project lead the way rooms currently being remodeled, locker room remodeling updates, replace the PA system throughout the school, new auditorium seating for safety, and again, that's going to be ADA compliance as well. Updates to the bathrooms, additional student learning and professional collaboration space. There are still $22 million worth of unfunded projects on that long-term facility plan. The school district has hired Patron Insight, a research company that specializes in working with school districts to conduct unbiased research that will provide us with data to consider as we continue our facility planning process. Patron Insight will be asking New Berlin taxpayers their opinion on $14 million worth of that unfunded projects, including installing air conditioning at PC and Orchard Lane, HVAC upgrades at New Berlin West, replacement of exterior doors at New Berlin West, Poplar Creek, and Orchard Lane, replacing the pool at Eisenhower, and adding gym space at Eisenhower. We consider this research an investment to understand how our community feels about these unfunded projects, The data we gather from the community poll will inform our next steps in the planning process. Yesterday, Ken, who may as well head on this way, met with Tom, David, Joe Garza, Roger Dixon, and Melinda, who's in the back, and I, to talk about this survey and draft it. At this point in time, I'd like to distribute a draft of that survey and invite Ken up to the podium to kind of talk us through each section of the survey.
While those are being distributed, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is very nice to be here today, and I want to issue a note of thanks to the team that took a portion of their Sunday yesterday to really do a deep dive with me on the nuances, the details about the projects that we want to ask about, because it's understanding those nuances and those details that allows us to create a truly unbiased approach to gathering the information. A couple of housekeeping items very quickly. We will be contacting via landline and cell phone a cross-section of 379 people in the community, all registered voters. Now, why 379? Well, with the number of registered voters in the community, 379 gives us data that has a margin of error of plus or minus 5%, which is fairly standard for a planning survey of this type. However, we will also be making the same survey available online via the district's website. So anyone who wants to weigh in will have an opportunity to do so. And there will also be a staff version of the survey. And when I say version, really the only differences will be in the language. Obviously, in a telephone survey where someone is doing an interview, you have language such as I just said. Well, you don't have that in a written form in an online survey. So those will be the adjustments, but it will be the same survey. So really, we will hear from staff, we will hear from anyone who wants to weigh in from the community, and then that statistically reliable cross-section. I do want to go through very quickly, section by section, just to kind of give you the thought process here. You will notice at the top that we have phonetic spellings on things, or phonetic pronunciation. We do have an extensive training program, but I always like to put a little reminder in there that it's Berlin, not the other way around. So that's why you see that at the top. And we do know how to spell Berlin, even though on question 3 it appears we do not. So that will be corrected as we go through. Questions 1 through 4 give us the chance to confirm that we are talking to a registered voter who is a head of household, who does live within the district. The list we will be securing from a third party will have individuals that fit those qualifications. However, each person must confirm that they are yes, yes, and yes to those 3 questions to continue. Question 4, and I'm not going to go question by question, so don't fear, but question 4, we want to divide the district up based on the elementary school drawing areas to make sure that where more people live, we have more interviews, and where fewer people live, we have fewer interviews. Now, this doesn't affect the online. People from wherever can participate in the online, but for the statistically reliable survey, we need to make sure that we have an appropriate distribution. You always want to start a survey with some questions that let people know that they can help, that they don't need any inside information, any details about the district. They just need to have an opinion. And that's what questions 5 through 20 do. It gives us an opportunity to kind of take people back to school and say, kids in school are given a grade for their performance. I would like you to grade the school district of New Berlin on a variety of different areas. So we talk about teachers, principals, tax dollars, how they're being spent, the school board, the buildings, a whole host of areas. And what we'll get from that is an understanding about areas that people think are really strong and areas which may need attention. Now, as you're looking at this, probably your first thought is, oh my gosh, we're probably going to get, there probably maybe a couple of areas of concern. As I told the group yesterday, this is all very much a shades of gray exercise. What we're looking for is how many grade above a B and how many grade below a B. So it's a chance to really see what a cross-section of people, not just the people that you always hear from, but a cross-section of people are thinking about the performance of the district. We close that with an open-ended opportunity for people to tell us the strengths and areas needing improvement in the district, and that's open-ended. We don't give them some answer ideas and say which one of these. We really want to hear what is top of mind. in terms of strengths and potentially areas needing improvement. We transition with questions 24 and 25, talking about the programs that the district has with businesses, community leaders, civic leaders, asking each person on the phone if they're aware of these programs, and if they are, then we say, tell me the ones that you know about. That's a communication question. We want to find out what people are familiar with, not put them on the spot, but find out which programs and relationships they're familiar with, so that the ones that we know are being very successful and that aren't very well known, we have a communications objective then going forward. The questions that start on 26 and go through 37, I won't go through those individually, but those are the project questions that Mr. Maxey talked about. And you will see that what we do is we provide very basic information about each of the projects without any selling or any attempt to kind of coax people. So for example, on 26, and they all start out, one idea is. And the idea there is we're going to rotate these. Not to get too nerdy here, but we don't want people to hear them in the same order. We'd like them to hear them in a different order so that if they get tired toward the end, they're not getting tired of always on the same question. So one idea is to install air conditioning at Poplar Creek Elementary and Orchard Lane Elementary, which are the two schools in the district that do not currently have air conditioning. Just factual statement. And then we ask, how much of a priority do you think this is? High, medium, low, or not a priority? Individuals who say it's either a high priority or a medium priority will then be asked, if adding air conditioning to these two schools required additional financial support from taxpayers, would you strongly favor it, oppose it, or strongly oppose it? If they don't say it's a priority, they don't get asked that question because they've already kind of stated their case. I don't think it's a priority. If they don't think it's a priority, they won't think it's a financial priority either. We go through that for each of the projects. The only question, the only project that has a slight wrinkle in it is the swimming pool. And we ask, again, same approach, but what we do is we ask about the simple solution to the pool first. Individuals who say, yes, I believe that's a high or medium priority, will be asked again, if it required additional taxes, how would you feel? If they say they would support it, we will then ask about the next step. In other words, the more complex changes. If they say it's either not a priority or I think it is, but I wouldn't be willing to support it, we're not even going to go into the more complex because they've already given us their answer as to how they would feel about that. The final substantive section on 38, 39, and 40, and you will see there are X's in these questions. Roger and the financial team are going to provide this information, but the idea here is we've shared the information about the potential projects. We've asked people individually if it required additional support from a tax perspective. How would you feel about that? And then we say, what if the projects you thought were priorities required a tax increase of, it says X right now, dollars per year for the owner of a $250,000 home in the district? How would you feel about this? Would you strongly favor it, and so on? We have 3 of these because we want to start with if all of these projects were on the list, what would be the tax figure for that? An individual who says, I'm good with that, I strongly favor, or the interviewer deems them to be saying lean favor, we won't ask them about a middle level or a lower level, because history tells us if they are okay with a higher level, they'll be okay with a middle or lower level too. If they're not in favor, then we ask them about a middle level. If they're still not in favor or unsure, we ask them about a lower level. And then we say, can you tell me a little bit more about that if they still aren't in favor? To find out if it's a project issue, a tax issue, whatever the case may be. The final, I just said that was the final, but that was the final project questions. The final question is information on information sources, and that is question 42. We will be reading this list, and you'll see that's rotated also, reading this list of potential places where people can get information about the school district, besides weather-related school closing information. The idea here is to say, where should we be concentrating getting our message out where more people will see it? Whatever that message happens to be. So you'll see we have 3 newspapers in there, television stations, home and school association. Pretty much we did a deep dive yesterday on the places where people could look for that information. The last section is demographic information, which will allow us to cut up the data and say, people of a certain age feel this way versus people of a different age, people who own their home versus rent, male versus female, current households, current student households, past student households. So we'll get the whole picture, and then we'll be able to see what the differences are. Again, that makes it good management information, good communications information. That's really where we are right now. It's a lot of paper, and that's because we put everything vertically. So you'll see, like on those grading questions, we see A, B, C, D, F on every one. This is about, if we have a chatty person, it'll be 15 minutes because the people that do this for us are real pros. The typical person, about 12. And we never run out of people. We always find people. Schools are a little different than tuna fish, I always say. When you say, I have a question, I want to ask you some questions about schools, people tend to want to participate at a higher level. So, questions? From one other issue, by the way, from a timing standpoint, we're going to wait till after school starts because people's kind of heads are more into school, and we want to make sure we have people, we don't miss people on vacation and things like that. So our current projected starting date is September 8th. About 2 weeks to do the data collection on the phone because we only call 7 to 9 in the evening and 12 to 6 on Saturday so that nobody gets their dinner hour interrupted. And 2 weeks, maybe a little longer with the online making that available to folks. So, now questions. I just want to make sure we had the dates down.
Well, thank you. One of the goals that we set out from the very beginning was to create a survey or a poll that was not biased or leading in any way. So I guess my question for the other members of the board that have this in front of them, as you looked through, did you find any question that you thought would lead to, a foregone conclusion? Was this survey developed in a way that we want this to happen? Or is this more of a let's get information? Susan?
Do you want me to answer?
Yes.
I'm probably not the right one to answer because I'm not for this survey, in all honesty. I have a couple concerns. The 379 voters, it sounds like that's a reasonable amount. You said you're going to get them from different parts of the community, and you're going to do that based off of question 4. Is that how you do that?
That's correct. They will be providing that information to us, but we will use the information provided by the district to say we should have 25% here or 30%. We aren't to that point yet, but that seemed like a good way to divide up the district.
Okay. And we do know a lot of people in our community, in every community, right? They're struggling financially, and I know we had some people share some of that already. But I don't see you talking about so much their income or their situation. Are you interested in if they're retired or if they have kids in school? It could be private school. I know you're getting more at the public school.
Well, we do, in the back end, in the demographics, we do ask, and I know we've been flipping through this quickly, so 47 and 48 do ask if they are a current New Berlin student household, a pass, meaning everyone's graduated, or a never student household. We can certainly add demographic questions. Income questions, that's a board decision. We have seen them be very successful and helpful. We have also seen some backlash when people say, why are you calling me and asking me how much money I make? So that would be a decision the district would have to make. Same thing with racial ethnic questions. Sometimes we include it. That wasn't part of the conversation on Sunday. That doesn't mean it can't be.
Okay. I'm just looking for what's the norm. Now, have you done a lot of school districts?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, we've been doing this for 22 years, and we're in 11 states and about 140 school districts. Many that we do every single year to test satisfaction levels, or if they've made a change to see if that change has made any difference in an opinion. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So I know you know this inside out, and I certainly don't.
No, please.
A couple other things, and I'll let other members speak. But when you do the grading, that always seems like a little slippery slope to me without having to ask a question on why did you give that grade, especially if it's a D or an F. I guess I'd want to know why. I know you try to get to it maybe a little bit further on, but I guess I'm curious. And there seems like there's a lot of questions here, and I know my attention span is short, so. I appreciate that, but are you concerned that there's a little bit too much?
Well, I mentioned to the group yesterday that I predicted 55 after our meeting, and we ended up with 48, if you don't count gender, because we don't ask people their gender. We're just going to assume we can figure that out on the phone. We've done as many as 80 questions successfully, and I think what kind of softens the blow a little bit is the fact that we never stay on one topic forever. So we have the grading questions, and about the time people start to get fatigued with that, we move into something else, and we ask them to dialogue with us about strengths and areas needing improvement. And then we say, well, what about the community programs? And we say, well, let's talk about the projects. So there's enough of a kind of a ebb and flow of the conversation that it works fairly well most of the time. Again, I say fairly well. We've been 22 years. Doesn't say it's foolproof, but this doesn't scare me from the standpoint of the length. The grading questions, we have on occasion for low grades said, tell me a little bit more about that. Once in each of 2 districts in 22 years did the average score on one of these questions fall below a C. It's always above a B, below a B, kind of a thing. So it gives you a snapshot that says people are really jazzed about the teachers or the performance of the students. And they're not really sure about a couple things. Doesn't mean they're negative about them. I'm as interested in the don't know answers. How many times people say don't know? Because school board and administration often have high don't know scores, and I always say that's okay, because they're concentrating on what's happening in the buildings. If they're happy there, you're doing your job.
Okay.
So, and I should have brought in my umbrella, obviously.
I know.
So I think I'll stay for the board meeting. So.
And I just have 2 other quick questions. So we're spending a lot of money on facilities now, but we're talking about what what we might do in the future. Is there a way to interject a question to make sure that the audience of who you're capturing understands what we're doing now? Because again, there's a substantial amount of money being spent.
I would be concerned about anything that would seem to be selling how neat things are now, because the old expression, perception is reality. I want to know their perception right now. And so what is their perception about the performance of the district? What is their perception about the validity of these ideas? Would they be willing to spend money? I worry that if you say, here's everything that's being done, it's sort of setting the table to say, and so let's just continue down that track, as opposed to here's some things that we have, some ideas that we have going forward. And we just want to know what you think of them individually.
I understand what you're saying. I just think that that's an important indicator. I mean, anyway, I would like some consideration to that if we can talk through that.
Can you tell me, can you describe, I'm not asking you to write a survey question, but can you describe what you'd like in here?
Maybe something to the effect of, are you aware of the current facility program currently underway, or something to that regard? Is there awareness of what's being done today? And you're the expert certainly, but I think that's important to understand those that know what's happening today versus those that don't.
Okay.
And then my only last point was on the pools.
Mm-hmm.
You talk about the Eisenhower pool, but there's no discussion on the west or anything regarding that. I don't believe I saw that here. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
So I guess, kind of going to that question about, does the community require 2 pools at each of the high schools? Do you see other alternatives? And asking that question for the community.
I want to stop right there.
Okay.
There is no discussion at any point about 2 pools in any building.
No, I'm saying we have 2 pools. We have one at West and one at
Earlier
Eisenhower.
it came out like
I'm
that
sorry.
we would somehow build a second pool at a facility.
Sorry.
And it sounded to me like you thought we were building a second pool in one building.
No, but there's been talk about both pools needing
Good.
some work, correct?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. We're not building 2 pools. Make sure that's noted. But again, I just think it's important to look at other opportunities. So, do you think that we need another pool? Or excuse me, do you think we need to put money into the pool? Do you think we need a pool? I mean, I think getting more deep into that question, because that has been a conversation in our community for several years.
Do you not think that the first pool question, where if someone were to say that's not a priority at all, wouldn't get at that issue?
I don't think it gets at the whole issue that's what is facing our district right now.
Okay.
Do we need a pool at both schools, or do we need a pool at all at either schools? I guess I'd like to go deeper on that. I don't know what the other board members feel regarding that.
I'm open to whatever the board wishes on that topic. I'd be concerned about having too much confusion about, oh, I thought we were just talking about Eisenhower. Now we're talking about.
Well, it is confusing, but that's the topic. We do
Sure.
have issues at both of our schools, and there's conversation. I think you might have heard it earlier as well. That talking about, do we need it? Do we need two pools, one at each high school or not? So I don't know. Am I the only one? I guess I'm looking for some insight from the board. And it's really hard to talk. with
It
that
is
range.
really hard, yes. Okay.
Does anyone have any thoughts on Jeff?
My thoughts on the pool, and I understand where you're coming from on the question.
Just 1 second. Let's try and wait for this to. Yeah. And trust me, if it's raining like this, we won't be in here for the annual meeting.
Yeah.
And I guess Ralph, 5-minute recess.
Okay.
Ralph, I guess to answer your question, why I like it in here is simply because I'm not sitting on a podium looking down at you. That's the reason. You're my equal. I'm not better than you. I'm not going to look down at you from a podium. But yeah, this room is not the best for sound. No, you don't. That's why I wanted to hear from you more than anyone. I mean, if you're not going to listen to your critics, you're an idiot. I think so. Amy. Okay, the rain seems to have let up or passed. Where's my gavel? You have my gavel behind you.
I always wanted to do that.
Yeah, we are ready. It's at least quieted down a little bit. We left off with you, Jeff.
Hello.
Hi. I think what Ms. Manley is looking for, because I understand where she's coming from. Right now, the district has 2 pools, both need maintenance. The idea is to try to gather information, because right now, West is being utilized by Eisenhower as well, because of the maintenance that's required at Eisenhower. So we're trying to figure out how to fund fixing both pools, even though Eisenhower is the one that needs the most work and is the most costly. So we're trying to figure out if there's a question that we can ask, whether or not the public would be interested in utilizing only one pool, maintaining both pools, if we can, because we're not building anything new. We already have pre-existing pools now that need maintenance, and one needs a severe amount of maintenance. It's really what it comes down to. So that's why they keep saying we need a new pool, because it's in that state. So if we could, you're the question man, so you're gonna have to,
Sure.
if we can have you come up with a question so they can identify at least and know what the situation is. That right now, we have a facility that both schools are using at West. So it's not like they're missing anything because we have one. We're just happen to be a school district that has 2.
And before you answer that, Amy, please do, or make your statement.
I guess my comment is if we start asking, if we only need one pool, why don't we just throw the question on then, do we just need one high school? There's a lot of people out there that believe that. And I think if we're going to start looking at, I think it just will lead people to believe, if we start asking about one pool, assumptions are made that we're moving to one high school, but we're not asking that question. It'd be like asking, do we only need one gym? Do we only need one physics lab? I mean, if you start looking at just one, we're looking, it's just a perception then that we're looking at one high school. Everybody knows that we're looking at Eisenhower Pool. That's been on the agenda for the last couple months. I don't think it's misleading by that. I think, I don't know what the funds are or what it's cost to upgrade West. West is not in need of a pool right now. And if that could be done just on our regular operating fund, we have funds for maintaining, and that could be possibly done that. This is significant. This is above and beyond our maintenance fund. So I would just caution against that.
I would like a little time to think about how to solve all of these kind of challenges without putting a thought into folks' head that isn't something that you want. But we serve at the bidding of the board, so let me step away and think about how to manage that, so we're not attempting to or appearing to lead, which we don't want to do, nor create a challenge, which we don't want to do either. We just want to lay it out and say, what do you think? So let me give that some thought. Okay.
Can you help us understand, and we talked about this yesterday, so we're going to have survey data from the phone interviews. Then we'll have survey data because the survey will also be online for anyone to take. Okay?
Right.
How do we then study the 2 different pieces of data, because they could be very, very different, and how do we then, or how do you report on those 2 different, could be very different pieces of data?
What you'll be getting is 2 separate reports. One will be the phone survey report, and that will be in great detail because that is the statistically reliable survey. It's a cross-section of folks who are interested, or kind of interested, decided to take it, so that you really get a sense of not just the people who routinely speak up on any particular issue. We will then have an online report that will show what the phone survey data said on a particular question, and then what the online community said and what the online staff said. What you will get from the online community is more of the individuals who routinely speak up, because people don't sit around at home and think, you know what I think I'll do tonight? I think I'm going to go online and take a survey, if they're not interested in the topic. The staff, we hope, will be a good cross-section of individuals, because staff tends to be one of the top 3 sources of school district news in the community. teachers, principals, and the like. So we really want to hear what their thoughts are too. So if they're thinking differently than the community at large, that's an important point to know as you continue to make your plans. But the one that we will very much focus your attention on because of the statistical validity is the phone survey. And we come back and present the report.
And so, you know, in looking and working through this for a few hours yesterday, I encourage everyone in the CRG to go online and look at the survey and go through the survey. I think you'll find that we went through great diligence to make sure it wasn't biased. It wasn't, you want a pool, don't you? It wasn't that. It wasn't, you know, the funding is brought out. All of these things are fleshed out. It is an extremely non-biased, non-leading survey. So I encourage you to please look at that and then give us feedback. If you think we completely botched it, say, I can't believe you asked that question. But we encourage you to go and look online at that survey, and the public as well. I think it's going to be we have some great results.
Great.
Sorry. One of the things I want to stress is the point of this is obviously not to get a piece of data so we can take action. It's to get data so that we can decide what we should do next and how that might happen. Just because the community says that they're overwhelmingly willing to raise taxes, if that would happen, doesn't mean that that's what we will be doing. But it's information for us to know. Jeff, you had...
Along the same lines, Dave, part of the board's mild distress usually is we're not getting the feedback that we want from the community. The feedback that we usually get is usually in this form where people don't like what we're trying to do, when right now what we're looking for is as much information as we can get. People are getting misinformation, they're misquoted. People are very misinformed because they are saying one thing about the pool for this. We're constantly being inundated with information that's usually not completely true. And what happens as a board is we sit here with an empty room week after week, month after month, with no feedback unless it's negative. So my goal and my hope in supporting this survey is to get as much feedback and information from the public randomly without, once again, leading these questions, but to find out what people actually know and hopefully start a stronger dialogue so we know where the community sits. We don't want to frivolously spend money. That's why we're doing this, is because we're all concerned about the tax dollars in this town, and which is why we want to have more information given to us.
And I will say that in 22 years, we've delivered our share of not so happy news from research results where a school district had hoped something and the unbiased survey said, nah, I wouldn't suggest you do that. And then it was up to the board to make their decision. But we're not shy about saying it doesn't really, there are a lot of questions about project A or B or C. It's not in our best interest to try and sugarcoat anything. So.
And statistically speaking, data are what they are. They don't, sure, obviously, he's got scientific research to kind of support if you were to do certain things, this is the likelihood or the probability of anything happening with it, but the interpretation is up to this board to determine what you're going to do with it. And again, our purpose is strictly to get information, gather another data set, because other than using anecdotal data and other than hearing from one side of the extreme or the other side of the extreme, so tonight we had people that didn't support the pool. You've had meetings where you've had people supporting the pool. Well, what about everyone else in between? That's another point of why we wanted to kind of bring this research base that's valid and reliable information to the board so you can make an educated decision so that you are being financial stewards of the money that we get from our taxpayers. And that's why we've hired Ken. That's why he's here. We're just about there. And it sounds like the only question at this point is questions around how we're going to word the pool piece. Is there anything else as far as questions for the questions that have been brought to the board, which was the direction that was given to us last time, which was give you the questions so you can see the questions before we throw the survey out there. I'm not hearing any other ones at this time. and just want to make sure that if there is a question or a problem or concern, that we get that aired out now, so that, because we need to start getting this pulled together behind the scenes.
The only other question was Ms. Manley's comment about what awareness of what's been done so far. And
Understood.
I've got kind of a solution for that right now in my head, so.
Tom, you had one last comment.
Last comment is, probably about 2 or 3 years ago, the public made it very clear that they didn't feel that we were communicating well enough. And they weren't, so we started a concerted effort with getting in an expert in communication with our Facebook page, with posting on the New Berlin Now, press releases, and we've been trying to get the public feedback. This survey is one of them. So we're trying to get, to feel the pulse of the public, all right? And quite honestly, what we see, with the exception of this evening, no one comes to the meeting. No one calls the board. No one makes themselves known unless there's a problem or they got a complaint, right? We want to get an understanding of what the public wants. There's misinformation and disinformation in Facebook blogs. New Berlin Now blogs are horrible. Reporting is sketchy at best. And so we need to get some solid statistical data from what the public wants.
Sorry, with the feedback we've been getting with the rain, I keep turning my mic off. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Ken. And
yes.
Again, thanks to everyone who came in yesterday to meet and help us kind of go through this. Susan, thank you for your input. And yeah, I'm just going to ask that I get those back.
In order to be able to protect the integrity of the study, particularly since some of the questions are going to change, these need to come back in, and
we will get busy with draft 4.
Thank you.
I don't think I'll need a boat to leave if I wanted to.
I think you can, Ken.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Next on the agenda is the secondary school programming, high school facility education credit waiver, option update, also known as, well, updating Act 105 policy.
So the draft that we've put together includes the changes that we proposed at the last meeting, which were to not only include those that participate in school-sponsored sports seasons. Previously, it was only WIAA-sponsored activities. As you know, we also sponsor activities that are not sanctioned by the WIAA, and that includes POMS, dance, and cheer. We wanted to make that adjustment, first of all. And then secondly, the way that we've stated it here are anybody that participates in 90-plus hours of a state or nationally sanctioned sport. For example, the person that was here last time was USA Gymnastics Association, also referenced the National Wheelchair Basketball Association, and so on, that those would also be included in participation waiver for the PE credit. We've done our best to put together a draft. What I would ask is at this time, we're seeking approval of this administrative rule. What that allows us to do is as we practically apply this, I don't have to constantly come back to the board and ask permission to, if we have something like a rock climbing club, is that eligible? And that every time something comes up, I don't have to come to the board asking for approval of that. That's what you hire us administrators for, is to make those decisions on your behalf. We get the gist of the recommendations that are being made. And again, this will allow our students to not duplicate services of having to take an additional half credit. Right now, they're required a year and a half or 3 semesters of gym or physical education. This would waive a half or 1 semester's worth to allow them to take courses in English, math, science, social studies, or a health elective in lieu of, again, those kids that are, the person that was here last time, their student is hours beyond hours of participation in gymnastics, and right now probably spending more time in gymnastics than they would in a PE class. And again, it allows our students to be free up their schedule so that they can be taking some of these other core academic courses. So we recommend approval of this rule as presented.
I have a motion by Mr. Kurth, second by Mr. Nickerson. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. The next item on the agenda is discussion with possible approval of resolution designating public depositories and authorizing withdrawal of school district monies. Mr. Dixon, can you tee that up?
Yes, I can. Typically, this would be kind of a consent item, agenda matter, but because it's been so long since this has been updated, I just thought the board should have a quick review. The purpose of this resolution, and is sent to each of the financial institutions in which the school district has any of its monies, the purpose is to clearly identify to the banking institutions what your expectations are. It gives protection to the banking institution, gives protection to the school district, it gives protection to those of us employees that have transfer authority. And the key thing is there that I cannot transfer money any place except between two school district and New Berlin accounts. Our controller cannot transfer any money except between two school district and New Berlin accounts. And that's really the key to it. And then those are the 4 banking institutions that we do any kind of business with.
Mr. President, I move that we approve the resolution designating public depositories and authorizing withdrawal of school district monies as presented.
Motion by Mr. David, second. Keep forgetting my mic. Motion by Mr. David, second by Mrs. Manley well, I'm not going to repeat that. That's a mouthful. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Next item is action from closed session.
I have one. I move to approve the amended employment service report as presented. I had that word in there. Amended.
Motion by Mrs. Manley, second by Mr. Kurth. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Future meetings and dates. The budget hearing and annual meeting will be in this building. I'll take it under advisement, Ralph, whether it should be in the other room or not. I know the acoustics are better there. I couldn't hear you, so maybe it's not a bad idea. Scratch. We're going to be in the PAC. All right. There will also be, and that's on Monday, August 25th. Start time for that will be 6:30 for closed session, and is that correct?
No, it closes after.
Oh, okay, that's right. 7 o'clock, 7 p.m. will be the annual meeting on August 25th in the PAC here at New Berlin West. Board meeting will be here on September 8th, 2014, again in the Idea Center, and again on September 22nd. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Motion by Mrs. Manley, second by Mr. Nickerson. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Meeting adjourned.